Welcome back to another episode of Drivin with Wander and Wonder, or as I may refer to it now in the future, Drivin and Jivin. The dream of the 1960s is currently alive in 2020's Canada. However, there are some factors which were not taken into account. But we can see sexual promiscuity on the rise. Polyamory is becoming the normal in the setting of the universities and the youth. You can see drug use on the rise, popularization in the establishment of psychedelics in particularly, but also marijuana becoming very normal for use. People are worried about a new conservative regime or right-wing regime turning back the clock on all of these new things which are considered progressive. But in my opinion, it would take a lot more than a conservative candidate to turn back the clock. The culture will operate whether or not the establishment approves of it. A lot of people are bootlickers. A lot of people won't resist new policies. But I do believe that these have been entrenched over the course of several generations to the fact where it would probably take several more generations for them to turn back the clock on them. So one thing that I'm quite sure the clock will not be turned back on is the central role of religion in the establishment, in society, in culture, as if the axis mundi, or the axis of the earth, the axis on which everything revolves around, was the divine. This is more of a monarchic point of view and started to be phased out during the Enlightenment era, or after the divine right of kings kind of came into question with the French Revolution and the fall of many European republics, European kingdoms, and all of these kingdoms became the countries in Europe that we know today. That's not to say that religion doesn't still play a central role in the lives of the folk that belong to Western society, but you can definitely see especially in the scientific world, that religion is seen as something that was practiced by our assumedly primitive ancestors. Now, the primitive aspect of our ancestors has been put into question by myself. I look at the way that the past is represented in history, in photos, in architecture especially, in any old building, and you can see that human beings before the technology age, before the information age, were just as smart, if not smarter, than they are now. Human beings may not have changed in their intelligence. There's always going to be a vast range between different people, but I believe that our intelligence is simply applied to the tools that we have at our disposal. And since our lives nowadays are largely run by these tools, you could say, in fact, that we are enslaved to them. Whereas before we had these tools, we were free in a sense, that we did not rely on so many of them, and were thus able to make use of our own mental faculties to solve problems. Not only appliances and vehicles and things like that, but even just simply problems. Like, we weren't able to go on the internet and look things up. You had to know someone, you had to learn it from a human being face to face. So social skills, you can see these kind of going out the window. Simply watch a debate, political debate, from the last 5 years, and compare it to one that was filmed in the 1960s. Even over the course of 2 or 3 generations, you can see a huge difference in the verbosity, in the charisma, in the speaking of politicians, and in people in general. Look at an old report card from the 1950s. Try to figure out what the curriculum was just a few generations ago, they treated people much younger as much more potentially intelligent. These days, it seems as though a high school diploma may have been, in fact, the equivalent of like a 6th or 7th grade education, simply just 2 or 3 generations ago. The reason that I'm interested in the ways of the past is not a logical fallacy and appeal to tradition, but I cannot make an appeal to tradition unless I have thoroughly examined the way that people in the past have thought and compared it to the way that we're thinking now, with, of course, a healthy critique in mind. In our current system, especially our current metaphysics, which is not often thought of, but does exist, in fact, in the background of the lives of every single person, we do not have room for a lot of things which an individual could consider real, but an objective society would have a hard time viewing it as such. So there are different levels, and we can take, for example, Immanuel Kant has this theory of there are the way that things are, and then there are way that the things are in of themselves. So we can even look at ourselves and we can think we appear outwardly to the world as such, but inwardly, or the way things are to themselves, is very different. We have a law operating behind the scenes. We have an imagination. We have dreams. Some people have visions. We have plans. There are many things that occur within each individual that would be very difficult for the outside world to see. And looking at history is a lot different than understanding it from within, from the perspective of those who took part in it. So I've already thrown the assumption out that people in the past were primitive. We may have had primitive tools, but our faculties may not have been so primitive. In fact, there are theories that say that over time, our intellectual capacities, our capacity for strength, all of our capacities are on the decline. This is the theory of de-evolution, or falling away from the garden, falling away from perfection. And that slowly over the course of the era, you'll see like a degradation of humanity. And these inclination, or these ascensions and declinations happen in a cyclical manner. So the fall will, of course, be followed by a great rise. And this is a theory, of course, that's touted today. So I, for one, believe that the gap between the absolutely intelligent, or the intelligentsia, and the common man is becoming larger and larger. The central role of the sacred, of course, plays a pivotal role in the forming of the metaphysics of the folk. So we, like I said, do not have room for many things, and it's interesting to try to reconcile the views of the past with our perceptions today. There are many things, beings, spiritual beings, elemental beings, gnomes, sylphs, many types of mythological beings, including like deities, like superhuman men and women, giants. We have not reconciled these ideas, and so we have to see them as either personifications of nature or myths that serve a social function. The characters within these myths being amalgamations of different people who have acted in such ways, or archetypes. You can see them as that, but they're not often written about that way. So how do we reconcile a primitive society that believes in spirits and ghosts and things like that, and demonic possession? How do we reconcile that with today, if we are not open to the idea of that being a reality? Our current metaphysics has failed us. Our current system is currently on the verge of failing us, even those who are trying to act within it to make it work. We must examine these things thoroughly if we are ever to have a shot at the good life. Stay true out there. This has been Wander and Wonder.